The sound of sneakers squeaking against linoleum echoed through the empty hallway as Jalen Brooks walked alone after the final bell. Suddenly, a heavy shoulder slammed him into the lockers. Metal rattled as 5 boys surrounded him, led by Tyler Johnson, the school's star quarterback. "Hey, new kid. Still not talking?" Tyler jeered, shoving Jalen again. The other boys laughed, expecting fear. Instead, Jalen's eyes hardened into something unexpected, not panic, but calculation. His breathing remained steady. His fists didn't clench in anger but stayed relaxed at his sides. Tyler didn't understand the silence. Nobody did. Nobody knew that every night, Jalen trained with his uncle, a decorated Navy SEAL who was teaching him exactly how to handle moments like this. Before we dive into this story, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now? Is it late at night when the house is quiet, or are you catching this during your lunch break? Drop your location and time in the comments below. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button to never miss another powerful story like Jalen's. Jalen Brooks was the invisible kid at Roosevelt High. Not because he wanted to be, but because being invisible was safer than being seen. 3 months ago, his mom Diana had moved them to this neighborhood for her new nursing job. At 16, Jalen was already on his 3rd school in 4 years. "Keep your head down, focus on your grades," his mother always told him. It wasn't bad advice. Diana Brooks worked double shifts to keep them afloat, leaving before dawn and returning long after dark. The tiny apartment they shared felt empty most days, but on weekends, everything changed. That's when Uncle Marcus picked him up in his weathered black pickup truck. Marcus Brooks wasn't actually Jalen's uncle, he was his godfather and his dad's best friend from their Navy days. After Jalen's father died in combat when Jalen was just 7, Marcus had stepped in. "Stand straight, shoulders back," Marcus would say, circling Jalen in the backyard of his small house on the outskirts of town. Power isn't about size. It's about control. Uncle Marcus had served 15 years as a Navy SEAL before taking a bullet in his right leg during a classified operation. Now he walked with a slight limp that somehow made him even more intimidating. His arms were covered in tattoos telling stories he never fully explained. For the past 2 years, Marcus had been training Jalen, not just in self-defense but in something deeper, mental discipline. They ran before sunrise, practiced hand-to-hand combat techniques, and meditated beneath the stars. Marcus taught him how to control his breathing when fear threatened to take over, how to read people's intentions from subtle body language, and most importantly, how to remain calm when everything inside him wanted to explode. "The strongest warrior isn't the one who always fights," Marcus would say. "It's the one who knows exactly when to fight and when to stand down." At school, Jalen used these lessons to become invisible. He sat in the back row. He ate lunch alone. He avoided eye contact with the ruling cliques that dominated Roosevelt High's social hierarchy. For almost 3 months, his strategy had worked perfectly. Until today. The first incident happened on a Tuesday afternoon as Jalen walked home. Most students had cleared out, the buses long gone. Jalen preferred the quiet walk home, taking the long route through the football field. That's where Tyler Johnson and his friends spotted him. "Hey! New kid!" The voice rang out across the empty field. Jalen kept walking, his uncle's voice echoing in his head, "Engagement is a choice. Choose wisely." Footsteps pounded behind him. 5 boys in varsity jackets cut him off, forming a half-circle. Tyler Johnson stood in the center, senior, quarterback, son of the school board president. His perfectly styled hair and expensive sneakers screamed privilege. "I'm talking to you," Tyler said, stepping forward. Jalen stopped, his face expressionless. "I heard you." The boy to Tyler's right, Damon, a linebacker with shoulders like boulders, laughed. "He speaks. I thought maybe you were deaf or something." Jalen remained still, his breathing controlled just as Uncle Marcus had taught him. His eyes scanned each boy, noting their stances, identifying the actual threats among the posturing. "You walk through the field every day like you own it," Tyler said, stepping closer. "This is our practice space. You need permission to be here." Jalen's face betrayed nothing, but his mind was calculating distances, angles, escape routes. 3 months of observation had taught him everything he needed to know about Roosevelt High's power structure. Tyler Johnson was untouchable. His father donated the new scoreboard, his mother headed the PDA. The teachers looked the other way when Tyler and his friends bent the rules. "I'm just passing through," Jalen said evenly. "Not anymore," Tyler replied, shoving Jalen's shoulder. The push was meant to make him stumble, to throw him off balance. But years of training with Marcus had given Jalen perfect control over his center of gravity. He moved with the push, absorbing its energy while maintaining his footing. The calm response seemed to irritate Tyler more than resistance would have. "What's wrong with you?" Tyler demanded, shoving harder. Again, Jalen rode the force, his eyes focused on Tyler's face. "Nothing's wrong. I just want to go home." From the corner of his eye, Jalen noticed a girl standing by the bleachers, watching. She had dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail and wore glasses too big for her face. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away. "We need to establish some ground rules," Tyler continued, his friends closing the circle tighter. "New kids need to understand how things work here." Jalen remained silent, his breath even. Marcus's training sessions had included much worse than this, holding plank positions until his arms shook, standing in ice water until he couldn't feel his legs. "Nothing to say?" Tyler mocked, then turned to his friends. "I think he needs a proper Roosevelt welcome." Damon stepped forward, grinning, but suddenly the assistant coach's whistle blew from across the field. "Johnson. Practice started 5 minutes ago." Coach Miller yelled. Tyler backed away reluctantly. "This isn't finished," he promised, his voice low. "Not even close." As the boys jogged toward the locker rooms, Jalen remained perfectly still, his heart rate barely elevated despite the confrontation. When he finally resumed walking, he noticed the girl was gone. At home that night, Jalen said nothing about the incident to his mother when she came home exhausted from her shift. But as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he knew with absolute certainty, something had started today, and it was far from over. Friday evening found Jalen in Uncle Marcus's backyard, his fists wrapped in training tape. Rain drizzled lightly as Marcus circled him, correcting his form. Again, Marcus commanded. "Tighter guard. Protect your center." Jalen pivoted, striking the heavy bag with precise, controlled movements. Each hit landed with purpose, not wild, not emotional. Marcus had drilled this into him: emotion makes you vulnerable. "Something's bothering you," Marcus said, stopping the bag. It wasn't a question. Jalen lowered his hands. "School stuff." Marcus's eyes narrowed. At 43, his face was weathered from years of desert deployments and ocean missions, but his gaze remained sharp, missing nothing. "What kind of school stuff?" he asked, passing Jalen a water bottle. Jalen took a long drink, considering how much to reveal. Uncle Marcus had clear views on handling problems, direct, decisive action. His mother preferred avoidance and peacekeeping. Jalen stood caught between these philosophies. "Some guys are giving me trouble," Jalen finally admitted. "The football team. Nothing I can't handle." Marcus's posture shifted subtly, a tightening across his shoulders that Jalen recognized as controlled anger. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. As Jalen recounted the confrontation, Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing darker by the second. "And you did nothing?" Marcus asked when Jalen finished. "I didn't need to do anything," Jalen replied. "The coach called them to practice." Marcus nodded slowly. And if he hadn't? The question hung between them. What would Jalen have done if the circle had tightened further? If the shoving had escalated to punches? I would have defended myself, Jalen said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Marcus circled the heavy bag, his limp more pronounced in the damp weather. There's a difference between defending yourself and protecting yourself. Defense is reactive. Protection is proactive. He stopped, facing Jalen directly. These boys, they targeted you because they thought you were weak. Because you've been invisible. That's what Mom wants, Jalen said quietly. Your mother wants you safe, Marcus countered. But there's more than one path to safety. He unwrapped his own hands, his knuckles scarred from decades of fighting. Tomorrow, we intensify your training. This isn't just about physical techniques anymore. This is about presence. About positioning. You want me to fight them? Jalen asked, confused. No, Marcus said firmly. I want you to make fighting you so unappealing that they never try. That night, as Marcus drove him home, Jalen made a decision. The invisibility strategy had failed. It was time for something new, not aggression, but a controlled, deliberate presence that would make Tyler and his friends think twice. I won't let them push me around anymore, Jalen told Marcus as the truck idled outside his apartment building. Marcus's hand clasped Jalen's shoulder. Remember what I taught you about predators. They don't attack what they perceive as dangerous. Make them see the danger without throwing a single punch. Jalen nodded, a new resolve forming in his chest. Monday would be different. He wouldn't hide or avoid. He would stand his ground. What he didn't realize was that Tyler Johnson was already planning his next move, one that would test everything Uncle Marcus had taught him. Monday morning arrived with a heaviness in the air that matched Jalen's mood. The weekend training with Uncle Marcus had been more intense than ever before. They'd focused on situational awareness, control tactics, and verbal de-escalation, skills Marcus had used in hostage scenarios overseas. The voice is a weapon, Marcus had instructed. Low, calm, confident. It can diffuse or escalate. Choose carefully. Jalen walked through Roosevelt High's main entrance with new purpose, his posture straightened, his gaze direct. The hallway seemed to part slightly as he moved, not dramatically, but enough that he noticed the difference. For the first time, he wasn't trying to disappear. In first period English, he chose a seat in the middle row instead of his usual back corner. When Mrs. Patterson called on him, he answered in the clear, controlled voice Marcus had coached, not loud, but present. By lunch, whispers followed him. Something had changed about the quiet new kid, though no one could quite identify what. Jalen sat alone as usual, but this time at a table in the center of the cafeteria. He felt eyes on him, including Tyler's from across the room. The quarterback whispered something to Damon, both of them staring openly at Jalen. Is this seat taken? Jalen looked up to find the girl from the football field standing beside his table, lunch tray in hand. Up close, he could see her eyes were an unusual amber color behind her glasses. It's free, he said. She sat down across from him. I'm Mia Chen. You're Jalen Brooks. Jalen nodded, surprised she knew his name. I saw what happened on the field last week, she continued, her voice matter-of-fact. Tyler's a jerk to everyone, but he seems to have taken special interest in you. Lucky me, Jalen said dryly. Mia's mouth curved into a half-smile. You handled it differently than most. Usually, people either run away or try to fight back. You did neither. Jalen studied her, using the observation techniques Marcus had taught him. Mia sat with perfect posture. Her movements were precise, economical. Her eyes constantly scanned the room, similar to his own habit. You take martial arts, he said suddenly, recognizing the discipline in her bearing. Surprise flashed across her face. Taekwondo. 8 years. How did you know? Before Jalen could answer, a commotion erupted across the cafeteria. Tyler and his friends were approaching, weaving between tables with deliberate slowness. Incoming, Mia muttered. You should know, Tyler's dad is the school board president. That's why the teachers never stop him. Jalen nodded, unsurprised. The information confirmed what he'd already suspected about the school's power dynamics. Tyler reached their table, flanked by Damon and 3 other boys. The cafeteria quieted as students sensed the confrontation brewing. Making friends, new kid? Tyler asked, his tone mockingly friendly. Jalen met his gaze steadily. Seems that way. Tyler's eyes narrowed at Jalen's calm response. He'd expected fear or anger, the usual reactions he could exploit. I don't think we finished our conversation the other day, Tyler continued, placing both hands on the table and leaning forward. Jalen didn't flinch. I think we did. From the corner of his eye, Jalen noted the cafeteria monitor. A distracted substitute teacher was scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the tension building. Tyler glanced at Mia. Didn't know you were into charity cases, Chen. Didn't know you were monitoring my social life, Johnson, she fired back. Tyler's face darkened. He turned back to Jalen. After school. Behind the gym. We'll finish what we started. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. I'll pass, Jalen said, his voice even. The calm refusal seemed to throw Tyler off balance. He wasn't used to being denied. It wasn't optional, he hissed, leaning closer. Jalen held his position, calculating distance and angles just as Uncle Marcus had taught him. Neither is my answer. For a tense moment, Tyler seemed ready to escalate right there in the cafeteria. Then, surprisingly, one of his own friends, a lanky boy named Chris, tugged at his arm. Coach is watching, Chris muttered, nodding toward the cafeteria entrance where Coach Miller had appeared. Tyler straightened, his jaw tight with frustration. This isn't over, Brooks. As they walked away, Mia let out a breath. That was either really brave or really stupid. Possibly both, Jalen admitted. You know they'll be waiting for you after school, right? They won't let this go. Jalen nodded. I know. Why aren't you scared? Mia asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Jalen considered the question. The truth was complex, involving years of training with Uncle Marcus, techniques honed to perfection, and mental preparation for scenarios far worse than high school bullies. Being scared doesn't help, he said finally. The afternoon crawled by with tense anticipation. In every class, Jalen felt eyes on him, some curious, some concerned. Word had spread about the confrontation at lunch. By the time the final bell rang, it seemed the entire school knew Tyler Johnson had challenged the new kid. Jalen stood at his locker, methodically packing his backpack. His muscles were loose, his breathing controlled. Uncle Marcus's voice echoed in his head, preparation eliminates fear. Know your environment. Control your breathing. Stay centered. When he turned to leave, Mia was waiting a few lockers down. Don't go out the back doors, she warned. They're waiting by the gym, just like they said. I appreciate the heads up, Jalen said, but I'm not taking the long way around. Mia frowned. You're actually going to face them? It's 5 against 1. Jalen shouldered his backpack. Sometimes avoiding conflict just postpones it. As Jalen walked toward the back doors, something unexpected happened. Mia fell into step beside him. What are you doing? He asked. Making it 5 against 2, she replied with grim determination. You don't need to get involved in this. Too late, she said. I sat at your table. In Tyler's world, that means I chose sides. They pushed through the double doors into the afternoon sunlight. Sure enough, Tyler and his friends were waiting in the empty space behind the gymnasium. A small crowd of spectators had gathered at a safe distance, eager to witness whatever was about to unfold. As Jalen approached, he heard his phone buzz with a text. He already knew who it was from. Uncle Marcus, remember. Control the situation, not just yourself. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement as Jalen and Mia approached the waiting group. Tyler stood in the center, his varsity jacket unzipped, his posture radiating arrogance. His friends formed a loose semicircle behind him. Thought you might run, Tyler called out, his voice carrying across the space. Brought back up, I see. The small crowd of students had grown larger. Some sat on the bleachers by the track field, pretending to wait for rides while clearly there to watch. Others didn't even bother with pretense, forming a loose ring around the confrontation. Jalen stopped at a perfect distance, close enough to engage in conversation, far enough to see any movement coming. Uncle Marcus had drilled him on spatial awareness for years. I'm not here to fight, Jalen said, his voice pitched low and controlled. Tyler's laugh was sharp. That's good, because you wouldn't stand a chance. Jalen didn't respond to the taunt. Instead, he maintained eye contact, his breathing steady. The techniques Uncle Marcus had taught him weren't just about physical combat, they were about psychological positioning. You've been avoiding me, Tyler continued, stepping forward. Walking around my school like you don't need to respect the way things work here. It's not your school, Mia interjected. And your way things work is just bullying. Tyler's eyes flashed with anger. Nobody asked you, Chen. She's right, Jalen said calmly. This doesn't need to happen. Tyler's attention snapped back to Jalen. Oh, it definitely needs to happen. You embarrassed me in the cafeteria. That doesn't go unanswered. Damon moved to Tyler's side. Let's just get this over with. Jalen remained still, his mind calculating. 5 opponents. Uneven ground. Multiple spectators. The school's security cameras likely couldn't see this area, a detail Tyler had surely considered. Last chance to walk away, Jalen offered, knowing the answer but following the de-escalation protocols Marcus had drilled into him. Tyler's response was physical. He lunged forward, shoving Jalen hard in the chest. Or trying to. As Tyler's hands made contact, Jalen executed a subtle sidestep, one of the first moves Uncle Marcus had taught him. The force of Tyler's push met partial resistance, then emptiness, sending the quarterback slightly off balance. The move was so smooth, so understated, that it looked like Tyler had simply pushed less effectively than intended. Confusion flickered across his face. What the, he started, then lunged again. This time, Jalen used a basic redirection technique, his hands coming up not to push back but to guide Tyler's momentum slightly to the side. Again, Tyler found himself pushing at air, stumbling forward. The crowd murmured. This wasn't going as expected. Tyler's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Stop dancing around and fight, coward. I told you, Jalen said evenly, I'm not here to fight. Something in Jalen's tone, the absolute certainty, the complete lack of fear, seemed to unnerve Tyler more than resistance would have. Damon, Tyler barked. The larger boy stepped forward with a grin. Where Tyler was all speed, Damon was pure power. He didn't bother with shoving. His right fist came straight for Jalen's face. Time seemed to slow as Jalen's training took over. Uncle Marcus's voice filled his head, a fight isn't won with force alone. It's won with positioning, timing, and leverage. Jalen's forearm came up in a practiced motion, deflecting Damon's punch outward while rotating his own body. The defense was economical, using minimal movement to maximum effect. Damon's momentum carried him forward as Jalen sidestepped. Gasps rose from the watching students. Nobody had expected the quiet new kid to move like that. Before Damon could recover, Tyler charged again, this time with both hands outstretched. His frustration had overridden his strategy, making his movement predictable. Jalen met the charge with a controlled response, a technique Navy SEALs used for subduing without injuring. As Tyler reached him, Jalen's hands found leverage points on Tyler's arms. A subtle shift of weight, a careful redirect of momentum, and suddenly Tyler was on his knees on the pavement, his arm locked in Jalen's grip. The position wasn't painful, but it was controlling. Tyler couldn't move without creating his own discomfort. "What the hell?" Tyler yelled, struggling against the hold. "Let go." "When you calm down," Jalen said quietly. The schoolyard had gone completely silent. The other three boys looked at each other uncertainly, not sure whether to jump in. "I said let go." Tyler's voice had risen, tinged with something new, fear. Jalen maintained the hold but leaned closer. "This isn't what I want," he said, his voice low enough that only Tyler could hear. "But I won't be your target anymore. Do we understand each other?" Before Tyler could answer, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Mr. Perkins, the vice principal, pushed through the crowd of students, his face tight with anger. Behind him trailed Ms. Winters, the school counselor. Jalen immediately released Tyler, stepping back with his hands visible. Tyler scrambled to his feet, his face flushed with humiliation and rage. "He attacked me," Tyler shouted, pointing at Jalen. "For no reason." The crowd erupted in protests. "That's not what happened," Tyler started it, "he's lying." Mr. Perkins held up his hands. "Quiet. Everyone disperse now, or you'll all be serving detention." As the crowd reluctantly began to break up, Mr. Perkins focused on the central figures. "Johnson, Brooks, Chen, and..." He pointed at Damon and the others, "All of you. My office. Now." As they walked toward the school building, Jalen felt Mia's eyes on him. "Where did you learn to move like that?" she whispered. Jalen didn't answer. His focus was on what came next. The physical confrontation might be over, but the real battle, the one involving school politics and Tyler's family connections, was just beginning. Inside Mr. Perkins' office, the bias became immediately clear. Despite multiple witnesses contradicting Tyler's version of events, the vice principal seemed determined to view Jalen as the aggressor. "Fighting is an automatic 3-day suspension," Mr. Perkins stated, looking directly at Jalen. "This school has a zero-tolerance policy." "With all due respect, sir," Mia interjected, Jalen didn't throw a single punch. He defended himself after Tyler and Damon attacked him. Mr. Perkins's expression hardened. "Ms. Chen, this doesn't involve you." "Actually, it does," she insisted. "I was there. And so were 20 other students who saw exactly what happened." Jalen remained quiet, observing the dynamics in the room. Tyler sat with a confident smirk, despite being the one who had ended up on the ground. The vice principal kept glancing at Tyler with what seemed like nervousness. "Perhaps we should call your parents," Ms. Winters suggested, her tone gentler than Mr. Perkins's. "My mother's at work," Jalen said. "But my uncle can come in. He's my emergency contact." Something in Jalen's calm suggestion seemed to unsettle Mr. Perkins. "That won't be necessary yet. For now, I think." The office door opened, interrupting him. Coach Miller stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "Perkins, a word," he requested. As the two men stepped outside, Jalen caught Tyler's eye. Despite his outward confidence, there was something new there, uncertainty. For the first time, Tyler was looking at Jalen as if he couldn't quite figure him out. And that, Jalen knew, was exactly what Uncle Marcus had been preparing him for. Diana Brooks rarely raised her voice. As a single mother who worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, she conserved her energy, choosing her battles carefully. But tonight, Her voice filled their small apartment as she paced the living room. Fighting? At school, she demanded, her nurse's scrub still wrinkled from her shift. This is exactly what I worried about with Marcus training you. I knew this would happen. Jalen sat on the couch, his back straight, hands resting on his knees. The controlled posture that had served him well during the confrontation with Tyler now felt like a barrier between him and his mother. I didn't fight, Mom. I defended myself. Diana stopped pacing, her exhaustion momentarily overtaken by frustration. The vice principal says otherwise. He called me at work, Jalen. Said you used excessive force on another student. That's not what happened, Jalen insisted. They attacked me. I just redirected them. Diana's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen and her expression tightened further. It's Marcus. The conversation that followed was tense and one-sided, with Diana doing most of the talking. Jalen could hear his uncle's deep voice through the phone, calm but insistent. No, you listen to me, Diana said firmly. Your training has my son in trouble. The school is talking about suspension. Yes, I know what bullying is. That's not the point. After she hung up, Diana sat heavily beside Jalen, suddenly looking all of her 41 years. Marcus is coming over, she said, sounding resigned. He wants to hear exactly what happened. 20 minutes later, Uncle Marcus arrived, still wearing his work clothes from the security consulting firm where he now worked. His limp was more pronounced tonight, a sign that his old injury was bothering him. Let me hear it from the beginning, he said, settling into the armchair across from Jalen. Jalen recounted everything, the initial confrontation on the football field, Tyler's harassment in the cafeteria, and finally, the after-school showdown. As he spoke, Marcus listened without interruption, his face impossible to read. You used the joint manipulation I taught you, he asked when Jalen described how he'd subdued Tyler. Yes, sir. The one that controls without causing damage. Marcus nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes that didn't escape Diana's notice. Don't you dare look proud about this, she snapped at him. This is exactly why I had concerns about your training. He defended himself without throwing a single punch, Marcus countered. That's exactly what the training was for. And now he's facing suspension, Diana shot back. How does that help him? The school's reaction isn't about what Jalen did, Marcus argued. It's about who he did it to. Tyler Johnson's father practically owns that school board. All the more reason Jalen should have walked away. And what message would that send? Marcus's voice remained controlled, but intensity simmered beneath. That it's okay for the privileged to prey on those they see as weaker? That Jalen should accept being a victim because his tormentor has connections? The argument continued, with Jalen caught in the middle, just as he'd been all his life. His mother valued peace and stability above all else, understandably after losing her husband to war. Uncle Marcus believed in standing your ground, in being prepared for the world's harsh realities. Both loved him. Both wanted to protect him. And yet their methods could not have been more different. The ringing of Diana's phone interrupted the heated discussion. She answered, listening intently before her expression changed to confusion. Yes, he's my son. Tomorrow morning? I see. Thank you for calling. She hung up, looking bewildered. That was Ms. Winters, the school counselor. The principal wants to meet with us tomorrow at 7:30. Apparently, several students have come forward with videos of what happened. Videos? Jalen hadn't noticed anyone recording. The counselor said they show pretty clearly that you were defending yourself, Diana continued. She also mentioned that Coach Miller is vouching for you. Marcus leaned forward. See? The truth is coming out. Diana didn't look convinced. The principal still wants to talk about Jalen's concerning level of combat training. The phrase hung in the air between them. "I'll come with you," Marcus decided. "They need to understand." "No," Diana cut him off firmly. "I think you've done enough. I'll handle this." The hurt that flashed across Marcus's face was quickly masked, but Jalen caught it. His uncle stood, his bad legs stiff. "Jalen," he said, his voice deliberately even, "whatever happens tomorrow, remember, you did nothing wrong. Standing up to bullies is never wrong." After Marcus left, the apartment felt emptier somehow. Diana sat beside Jalen on the couch, her anger fading into worry. "I just want you to be safe," she said softly. "To have a normal high school experience." "I know, Mom. These techniques Marcus is teaching you, they're not meant for schoolyards, Jalen. They're for war zones. For dangerous situations." Jalen looked at his hands, hands that hours ago had controlled another person's movement with precise, practiced skill. "Sometimes school feels like a war zone," he said quietly. Diana had no answer for that. The next morning, as they headed to the early meeting with Principal Davis, Jalen's phone buzzed with messages. The story had spread overnight, growing with each retelling. According to some versions, he had knocked out all 5 football players. Others claimed he was secretly training for MMA championships. But the message that caught his attention came from Mia. "Tyler's planning something. Be careful. He's telling everyone you caught him off guard but won't next time." As they pulled into the school parking lot, Jalen spotted Tyler and his father entering the building, Mr. Johnson in an expensive suit, his hand firmly on his son's shoulder, guiding him inside. The battle was far from over. The principal's office felt smaller with 9 people crammed inside. Principal Davis sat behind his desk, flanked by Vice Principal Perkins and Counselor Winters. Across from them sat Diana Brooks and Jalen, with Tyler Johnson and his father on the opposite side of the room. Coach Miller stood by the door, arms crossed. "I've reviewed the videos," Principal Davis began, her tone measured. "And I've spoken with several witnesses. It appears the situation is more complex than initially reported." Mr. Johnson shifted impatiently in his expensive suit. "With all due respect, Principal Davis, my son was physically assaulted. There's nothing complex about that. The videos show your son initiated physical contact, Richard," Coach Miller interjected. "Multiple times." Principal Davis held up her hand. "Coach, please. Let me handle this." She turned to Jalen. "Mr. Brooks, what concerns me isn't just what happened yesterday, but how it happened. Your response showed training that goes well beyond typical self-defense. Care to explain?" All eyes turned to Jalen. He felt his mother tense beside him. "My uncle is a former Navy SEAL," Jalen said simply. "He's been training me since I was 14. Surprise registered on several faces. Tyler's expression darkened. "And why would a high school student need military-grade combat training?" Mr. Johnson asked skeptically. Diana straightened in her chair. "My late husband was in the Navy. Jalen's training connects him to his father's legacy." Her voice carried a strength Jalen rarely heard. "And clearly, given what's happened, he needed those skills." Principal Davis studied Jalen thoughtfully. "I've been at Roosevelt for 15 years, Mrs. Brooks. In my experience, conflicts like these rarely have a single instigator. Are you suggesting my son deserved to be put in a submission hold?" Mr. Johnson demanded. "I'm suggesting," Principal Davis replied carefully, "that everyone involved shares some responsibility." She turned to Tyler. "Mr. Johnson, several witnesses reported you've been targeting Jalen since his arrival. Is that accurate?" Tyler glanced at his father before answering. "I was just messing around. He's the one who escalated things." "By refusing to be bullied?" Diana asked sharply. Principal Davis consulted a note on her desk. Our anti-bullying policy is clear. And while I have concerns about the level of force Jalen demonstrated, the videos show he was responding to aggression, not initiating it. Mr. Johnson stood abruptly. If you're implying my son is a bully. I'm stating facts supported by evidence, the principal interrupted, her patience visibly thinning. Now, here's how we're proceeding. Tyler, you'll serve a 3-day in-school suspension for initiating the confrontation. Jalen, you'll receive 1 day of in-school suspension for excessive force in your response. That's ridiculous. Mr. Johnson protested. My son is the victim here. Principal Davis remained unmoved. The video evidence suggests otherwise, Richard. Unless you'd like me to call an all-school assembly to view the footage together? The threat hung in the air. Mr. Johnson's face flushed with anger, but he remained silent. Furthermore, Principal Davis continued, both boys will participate in the school's peer mediation program when they return. As they filed out of the office, the tension remained palpable. In the hallway, Mr. Johnson gripped his son's shoulder, steering him away without another word. But Tyler's glare lingered on Jalen, communicating a clear message, this isn't over. Coach Miller approached as the others left. Jalen, a word? Diana hesitated, but Jalen nodded reassuringly. It's okay, Mom. I'll meet you at the car. Once they were alone, Coach Miller studied Jalen with newfound interest. Navy SEAL training, huh? That explains a few things. Jalen remained neutral. My uncle just teaches me basics. Coach Miller's laugh was short and knowing. Those weren't basics, son. I served 8 years in the Marines before becoming a coach. I recognize SEAL techniques when I see them. Jalen said nothing, maintaining the careful control Uncle Marcus had drilled into him. Look, Coach continued, Tyler's had this coming for a long time. But be careful. He doesn't like losing, and his father has taught him that rules don't apply to people with power. I'm not afraid of him, Jalen said simply. Maybe you should be, Coach replied. Not because he can beat you in a fair fight, clearly he can't, but because kids like Tyler don't fight fair. They escalate. They bring friends. They wait until you're vulnerable. The warning stirred something in Jalen's memory, Uncle Marcus describing how insurgents would lull SEAL teams into false security before attacking from unexpected angles. I appreciate the heads up, Jalen said. Coach Miller nodded. Just watch your back. And if you ever want to channel some of that training into something productive, the wrestling team could use someone with your skills. As Jalen walked to his mother's car, his phone buzzed with another text from Mia. Tyler's telling everyone he's going to catch you alone after your suspension. His exact words, let's see how tough he is without an audience. Jalen slipped the phone back into his pocket, his mind calculating. 1 day of suspension meant he'd return to school Tuesday. 1 day for Tyler to plan. 1 day for Jalen to prepare. Uncle Marcus's voice echoed in his head, the most dangerous fights are the ones you don't see coming. For the first time since the confrontation began, Jalen felt something close to genuine concern. Not fear, Uncle Marcus had trained that out of him years ago, but a clear-eyed recognition of escalating stakes. Tyler wouldn't come at him the same way twice. And next time, there might not be witnesses with phones recording. Tuesday morning arrived with a heavy fog that shrouded Roosevelt High in ghostly white. Jalen stood at the edge of the school grounds, watching students filter through the main entrance. His single day of suspension had felt less like punishment and more like preparation, time spent with Uncle Marcus reviewing situations, scenarios, and responses. Remember, Marcus had told him, awareness is your greatest weapon. See trouble before it sees you. Mia materialized beside him, emerging from the fog like an apparition. You came, she said, relief evident in her voice. Did you think I wouldn't? Tyler's been talking all day yesterday. He made it sound like you'd transfer schools rather than face him again. Jalen adjusted his backpack. That would solve his problem, not mine. They walked together toward the entrance, Jalen scanning constantly, noting positions, distances, potential trouble spots. The techniques had become second nature after years of Uncle Marcus's training. "They're not here," Mia said, reading his thoughts. "Tyler's suspension doesn't end until tomorrow. But his friends are inside." The morning passed in tense anticipation. In each class, Jalen felt eyes on him, some admiring, others wary. The story had grown during his absence, transforming from a schoolyard confrontation into something mythical. By lunchtime, he'd heard half a dozen versions of what had happened, each more exaggerated than the last. "Is it true you were in juvie before coming here?" a freshman asked as Jalen got his lunch. "Or that your uncle killed 30 men with his bare hands?" another chimed in. Jalen didn't bother correcting them. The rumors provided a certain protection, a shield of uncertainty that might make others think twice before challenging him. He joined Mia at what had somehow become their regular table. 2 other students sat with them now, Carlos, a quiet senior from Jalen's calculus class, and Zoe, a sophomore who'd witnessed the confrontation with Tyler. "Everyone's talking about you," Zoe informed him unnecessarily. "Let them talk," Jalen replied, focusing on his food. Carlos leaned forward. "Tyler's friends were in the weight room this morning. They're saying he's going to find you after last period." "He's suspended," Mia pointed out. "Doesn't mean he can't wait off campus," Carlos countered. "My brother's on the team with him. Says Tyler's been practically obsessed since Friday. Keeps saying the new kid made him look weak." Jalen absorbed this information without visible reaction, but his mind was working, calculating. Uncle Marcus had taught him that predictable patterns created vulnerability. Taking the same route home each day. Leaving at the same time. These were exploitable weaknesses. "I'll be fine," he assured them, though he was already adjusting his plans. The afternoon crawled by with excruciating slowness. In each class, Jalen found himself checking the clock, mentally mapping exit routes, contingency plans. Not out of fear, but from the tactical thinking Uncle Marcus had instilled in him. When the final bell rang, Jalen didn't immediately head for his locker like everyone else. Instead, he texted his mother. "Going to study at the library. We'll be home by dinner." It wasn't exactly a lie. He did plan to go to the library, eventually. But first, he needed to address the Tyler situation once and for all. Instead of leaving through the main doors, Jalen took a circuitous route through the music wing, exiting near the faculty parking lot. From there, he had a clear view of the school's perimeter. Sure enough, Tyler's distinctive red Mustang sat idling at the corner, just off school property. Inside, Jalen could make out 3 figures, Tyler behind the wheel, with Damon and another boy in the passenger seats. "You were right," Mia's voice came from behind him, making him turn. "They're waiting to ambush you." "How did you know I'd come this way?" Jalen asked. Mia gave him a knowing look. "Because it's what I would have done." "Are you going to avoid them?" Jalen watched the Mustang for another moment. "No. But I'm not going to let them dictate the terms either." He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text, then turned to Mia. "I need a favor." 15 minutes later, Jalen walked alone along the path that cut behind the school's athletic fields. This route would eventually lead to the public library, but it first passed through a small wooded area that separated the school from the adjacent park. It was the longest way home, and exactly where he wanted to be. He didn't have to wait long. The sound of a car door slamming echoed from the direction of the parking lot, followed by footsteps, multiple sets, moving quickly. They weren't trying to be stealthy. Jalen continued walking at a measured pace, allowing them to catch up. When he reached the small clearing in the center of the wooded path, he stopped and turned. Tyler, Damon, and Chris emerged from the trees, spreading out as they approached. Tyler's face was flushed with anger, his suspension clearly having done nothing to cool his temper. "Thought you could embarrass me and get away with it?" Tyler called out, his voice echoing in the clearing. Jalen remained still, hands loose at his sides. "I didn't come looking for trouble, Tyler. Not then, not now." "Too bad," Tyler sneered. "Trouble found you." He glanced at his friends, who began moving to flank Jalen on either side. The tactic was obvious: surround him, cut off escape routes, overwhelm him with numbers. 3 against 1, Jalen observed calmly. "Is that how you define a fair fight?" "Fair?" Tyler laughed harshly. "Was it fair when you used your freaky military moves on me? When you made me look weak in front of everyone?" Jalen remained centered, breathing steady. "You did that yourself." Tyler's face darkened. "Get him." Damon moved first, charging from the right while Chris came in from the left. It was a coordinated attack. They'd planned this, probably rehearsed it. But they hadn't trained with Uncle Marcus. As Damon reached him, Jalen sidestepped with the fluid economy of movement that came from countless hours of practice. He used Damon's momentum against him, a simple redirection that sent the larger boy stumbling past. At the same time, he pivoted to face Chris, who hesitated just long enough for Jalen to establish position. "Stop!" Jalen commanded, his voice carrying the authority Uncle Marcus had taught him to project. The unexpected force of it actually made Chris pause, a critical mistake. In that moment of hesitation, Jalen closed the distance between them, executing a control technique that locked Chris's arm behind his back without causing pain. "This doesn't have to continue," Jalen said, his voice level despite the confrontation. Damon had recovered his balance and was circling back. Tyler stood frozen, his plans already unraveling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "Let him go," Damon demanded. "So you can all jump me at once?" Jalen countered. "I don't think so." He maintained the hold on Chris, whose eyes had widened with the realization that he was outmatched. "Dude, he's not even trying," Chris said, a note of fear creeping into his voice. "He could have hurt me but didn't." Tyler's face contorted with rage. "You coward. Fight me one-on-one then." Jalen studied him for a moment, then released Chris with a gentle push. "Walk away, Tyler. This ends now." "The hell it does." Tyler charged forward, all strategy abandoned in his fury. What happened next unfolded in seconds that seemed to stretch into minutes. Tyler's wild charge met Jalen's practiced defense. A redirect, a sweep, and suddenly Tyler was on the ground, the air knocked from his lungs. Jalen stood over him, not pressing his advantage, but ready if Tyler continued. "It's over," Jalen said quietly. Tyler struggled to his feet, his face flushed with a dangerous combination of humiliation and rage. "You think you're so tough," he gasped, reaching into his jacket pocket. The flash of metal sent a jolt of adrenaline through Jalen's system. A knife, small but unmistakable in Tyler's trembling hand. "Whoa, Tyler." Damon backed away, hands raised. "That's too far, man." Chris was already retreating. "I'm out. This wasn't what we talked about." But Tyler's focus had narrowed to Jalen alone, the knife held inexpertly but dangerously before him. "Not so confident now, are you?" Jalen's training kicked into a higher gear. Uncle Marcus had covered weapons, how to avoid them, how to disarm when necessary, how to de-escalate before reaching that point. "Tyler, listen to me," Jalen said, his voice deliberately calm. "This crosses a line you can't uncross. Put it down." "Shut up," Tyler shouted, his voice cracking. "You ruined everything. I'm the one people respect around here, not some nobody who just showed up." He lunged forward, the knife slashing in a wild arc. Jalen moved with practiced precision, evading the blade while maintaining distance. Tyler's momentum carried him forward, off balance and vulnerable. In that moment, Jalen could have ended it, could have disarmed him, controlled him, even injured him if necessary. Uncle Marcus had taught him how. Instead, he spoke. "Is this who you want to be, Tyler? Someone who brings a knife to a fight he started? Who threatens people's lives because his ego got bruised?" Something in Jalen's words seemed to penetrate Tyler's rage. He hesitated, the knife trembling in his hand. "Your father's money and influence can't erase assault with a deadly weapon," Jalen continued, his voice steady. "Is that worth it? Is your pride worth destroying your future?" Tyler's eyes darted around wildly, reality seeming to crash in on him. His friends had abandoned him. He stood alone, armed against an unarmed opponent who somehow remained completely in control of the situation. "It's not too late to make a different choice," Jalen said quietly. For a tense moment, the outcome balanced on a knife's edge. Then Tyler's hand dropped to his side, the fight draining from him like air from a punctured balloon. "This is messed up," he muttered, looking suddenly younger, more vulnerable. "This isn't. I didn't mean." A new voice cut through the clearing. "Drop the knife. Now." Uncle Marcus emerged from the trees, his military bearing unmistakable despite his civilian clothes. Behind him came Mia, her phone in hand, clearly recording. Tyler's knife fell to the ground as the last of his defiance collapsed. "You called your uncle?" he asked Jalen, his voice hollow. "I texted him when I saw you waiting in your car," Jalen confirmed. "I knew you wouldn't let this go. But I didn't want it to end with anyone getting hurt." Marcus stepped forward, his limp more pronounced as he navigated the uneven ground. "The police have been called," he informed Tyler, his voice carrying the weight of authority that came from years of command. "That little stunt with the knife is assault with a deadly weapon. Felony territory." Tyler seemed to shrink before their eyes. "My dad will." "Your dad can't fix this," Marcus cut him off, gesturing to Mia's phone. "Not with video evidence. Not with witnesses." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Jalen looked at Tyler, really looked at him. Not as a bully or an enemy, but as what he truly was, a 17-year-old boy who'd never faced real consequences, who'd been taught that power meant dominating others, who'd never learned that true strength often meant choosing not to fight. "It doesn't have to define you," Jalen said quietly, so only Tyler could hear. "What happens next, how you respond to this, that's what will define you." The look Tyler gave him contained too many emotions to name: anger, fear, confusion, and perhaps, somewhere deep down, the first glimmer of understanding. As police officers entered the clearing, Jalen stepped back, letting the situation unfold. Uncle Marcus's hand found his shoulder, squeezing gently, a silent acknowledgement of a battle well fought, a victory achieved not through force, but through control, discipline, and ultimately, choice. The confrontation was over. But its real impact was just beginning. 1 month later, Jalen sat on the bleachers watching Roosevelt High's basketball team practice. Beside him, Mia worked on calculus homework, occasionally looking up to check the score of the scrimmage. "Still weird not seeing Tyler out there," she observed. Jalen nodded. After the incident in the woods, Tyler had been suspended pending a disciplinary hearing. The knife had elevated what might have been a simple fighting charge into something much more serious. In the end, his father's influence had kept him out of juvenile detention, but not out of consequences entirely. Tyler had been transferred to a private school across town and assigned mandatory counseling. "Heard from Chris that he's actually doing better there," Mia continued. "Smaller classes, more structure." "Good," Jalen said, and meant it. The aftermath had rippled through Roosevelt in unexpected ways. Vice Principal Perkins had been reassigned after an investigation revealed a pattern of selective discipline based on students' family connections. Coach Miller had implemented a zero-tolerance policy for bullying on all athletic teams. And Jalen, ironically, had become something of a reluctant school hero, the quiet new kid who stood his ground without becoming a bully himself. "There's your uncle," Mia pointed toward the parking lot, where Marcus's black pickup had just pulled in. Jalen gathered his books. Their training sessions continued, but they'd evolved. After the confrontation with Tyler, Jalen had asked to learn more about the psychological aspects of conflict resolution, the techniques Uncle Marcus had used to talk down hostile civilians in war zones. "Same time Saturday?" Mia asked as Jalen stood to leave. Their friendship had deepened in the weeks following the incident. Mia had started joining their weekend training sessions, her taekwondo background blending surprisingly well with Marcus's more tactical approach. "Actually," Jalen said, "Mom's making her special lasagna tomorrow. She asked if you wanted to come over." Mia smiled. "I'd like that." As Jalen headed toward the parking lot, he passed Damon coming out of the gym. Their eyes met briefly. There was no hostility now, just a quiet, awkward acknowledgement. After Tyler's transfer, Damon had approached Jalen in the cafeteria. The conversation had been stilted but sincere. "I was following the wrong leader," Damon had admitted. "Shouldn't have gone after you like that." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a start. Uncle Marcus was leaning against his truck, his bad leg stretched out before him. He straightened as Jalen approached. "How was school?" he asked, the routine question carrying more weight than it might have in another family. "Good," Jalen replied. "Got an A on that history paper." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Your mom already texted me about it. She's proud." They climbed into the truck, the familiar smell of leather and gun oil enveloping them. As Marcus started the engine, he glanced sideways at Jalen. "Principal Davis called me today," he said. "Wanted to discuss something." Jalen tensed slightly. "What about?" "She's starting a peer mentorship program. Wants you to be part of it. Pairing up kids who might need some guidance with others who can provide it." Surprise registered on Jalen's face. "Me? A mentor?" Marcus chuckled. "Don't sound so shocked. You handled yourself with more maturity than most adults would have in that situation with Tyler." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road. "I've been thinking," Marcus said finally. "About what you asked, learning more about de-escalation rather than just physical techniques." Jalen waited, knowing his uncle would continue when ready. "In all my years with the teams," Marcus continued, "the missions I'm most proud of aren't the ones where we defeated an enemy. They're the ones where we prevented conflict altogether." He glanced at Jalen. "The strongest warriors are the ones who know when not to fight. You proved that." As they pulled into the driveway of Jalen's apartment building, they spotted Diana arriving home from her shift, her scrubs replaced by civilian clothes. She waved, her smile warm. The tension that had existed between her and Marcus since the incident had gradually eased. Seeing how Jalen had handled himself, choosing restraint over retaliation, even when faced with a knife, had reassured her that Marcus's training wasn't turning her son into a weapon, but rather helping him become something far more valuable, a young man who understood the responsibility that came with power. "Mom said to invite you for dinner," Jalen told Marcus as they got out of the truck. Marcus hesitated. "You sure she wants me there?" "She specifically said to drag you in if necessary." A smile cracked Marcus's usually stoic expression. "Well, I never could say no to your mother's cooking." As they walked toward the building, Jalen felt a sense of alignment he hadn't experienced before. The different parts of his life, home, school, training, no longer seemed to pull him in opposing directions. Instead, they had become integrated, complementary aspects of who he was becoming. He wasn't just the quiet new kid anymore. He wasn't just the boy with military training. He was Jalen Brooks, student, son, nephew, friend, and maybe soon, mentor. The school would always have its hierarchies, its challenges, it's Tyler Johnson's. But Jalen had learned something powerful through this experience. True strength wasn't found in dominating others or in avoiding conflict at all costs. It was found in the balance between the two, in standing your ground without losing yourself, in being prepared for the worst while still hoping for the best. As they reached the apartment door, Diana greeted them both with hugs, Marcus's slightly more tentative but genuine nonetheless. "So," she said, looking at her son with pride gleaming in her eyes, "tell me about this mentorship program Principal Davis mentioned." Jalen smiled, ready to share the next chapter of his journey with the two people who had shaped him, in different ways but with the same love, into the person he was proud to be. That's the end of Jalen's story. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't found in how hard you can hit back, but in knowing when restraint is the most powerful response. Jalen could have used his training to hurt Tyler at any point, but instead chose a path that broke the cycle rather than continuing it. In life's confrontations, the true victory often comes not from dominating others, but from refusing to let conflict dominate who you are. What would you have done in Jalen's position when Tyler pulled that knife? Would you have reacted with force or followed Jalen's path of de-escalation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found yourself rooting for Jalen throughout this journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more stories about underdogs who rise above their circumstances in unexpected ways. Our next powerful story is coming up right now on your screen.